I am so glad and grateful that it was a unanimous vote, because I think it sends an even stronger message. We're drawing our line in the sand here in Chautauqua County. We're no longer going to stand for this industrialization of our pristine communities in our county, and we are doing what I believe is truly in the best interest of everyone in the county. I'm grateful for the legislature's support, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. And my hope is that these guys fold up their tents and go away and don't come back. There's always strength in numbers, and just like us, we looked to other counties to see what they had done, and I hope now that other counties throughout New York State will look at Chautauqua County and say, well, they did it, now it's our turn. And I think we can beat back this thing as a whole, because I look at that map with all of these proposed projects, and again, for projects that don't deliver at all on the promises that they make, we're going to destroy our landscape upstate for what is essentially a political agenda and a profit investment scam is all it is, and I hope that other communities band together throughout upstate New York, and that we beat back this this tragedy from occurring in New York State and destroying the beautiful, pristine area that we enjoy up here in upstate New York.
I'm very pleased that it passed unanimously, and I think the message tonight was that we are listening. We've had meeting after meeting, several folks from the town of Arkwright and elsewhere come here to speak on these large wind turbine projects. And we do have a limited role in the county, what we can do, but we took an important step tonight by passing a resolution limiting the pilot programs from the Chautauqua IDA to 5 megawatts and smaller. What this does, basically, we will grant pilots to those small projects for residential homes, but these large turbine projects will no longer be receiving pilot monies from this county to support those projects. This is the first step, I hope, in many that we can do. I think the message tonight too was we need to do our homework. We're listening, and I'm very pleased that it passed. Unfortunately, it does not correct what has already happened here. Those projects are underway. We cannot stop those. Again, listening to, like from the town of Arkwright, what they're doing to the county roads, bringing in this heavy equipment is a shame. But at least now the IDA will not be giving pilots to any large turbine projects over the 5 megawatts. Well, I think as more counties take a stance on this, it's going to create wider attention statewide. I know 2 other counties passed resolutions similar to this. Theirs was 25 megawatts. After we did some research, realizing how large that is, because I believe one turbine is roughly 2 to 2.5 megawatts. So this really limits what we did tonight to no more than, say, 2 turbines. Where if the other one would have passed, it could have been 10 or more turbines. So hopefully other counties, our neighbors around us, will listen and do similar resolutions and take a united stance.
For 50 by any foreseeable future is impossible. Exorbitantly expensive, environmentally destructive in all kinds of dimensions, and is not going to be achieved. This is, I think, pandering, frankly, to the environmental left as Governor Cuomo contemplates a run for the presidency. The environmental impacts of large wind farms are really quite stark in terms of unsightly land use, noise, flicker effects, heavy metal pollution from the production of the wind turbines themselves.
The 50 by 30 program is unrealistic for a number of reasons. First and foremost, in order to have 50% of our electricity come from renewable energy, that might be possible in a smaller state like Kansas or Wyoming, but New York State is one of the largest users of electricity in the world, and New York City in particular. So to do that, you're going to have to blanket all of upstate New York with windmills and solar panels. And that is just devastating to one of the main assets that we have here, which is the pristine beauty of our outdoors. That's what separates us from New York City. So I think it's unrealistic, and on top of that, going to be extremely expensive to taxpayers, because wind energy is not self-sustaining. It will have to be subsidized. And to do 50% of the large demand that New York State has for electricity in a subsidy format is going to cost billions perpetually to the taxpayers.
That's the one thing that we know renewables do, is raise the cost of electricity, and that of course hurts lower income folks. On the other hand, it's not going to do anything for the climate. There are 2,400 coal-fired power plants in planning or being constructed across the world right now. China is constructing 1,000, India is constructing 400, even Japan's building 45. What you do in New York State isn't going to have any effect on global temperatures, but it's going to raise energy prices for New York citizens.
This sort of forced transition from fossil fuels into, quote-unquote green energy, which is really not all that green, is going to accomplish nothing except make New Yorkers poorer.
The people that are paying for this garbage with our tax dollars are the very people like Linda, Kathy, and Al who are being assaulted with their own taxpayer money. Al had to sell his home because he couldn't even live in it anymore. And you can tell how passionate I get when I talk about this, because it's not right.
I am not against subsidies. I'm against subsidies that don't serve the public good, the greater good. In this case, you have a subsidy that is essentially benefiting a very small group of people, primarily the people that are the speculative investors. I should say not even speculative, because they're getting guaranteed government return. Those investors that are the main beneficiaries that are going to profit the most from these. And we are going to sacrifice the people whose quality of life is going to be negatively impacted by these wind turbines. So a bad subsidy is one that doesn't serve the greater good, and I'm against subsidies that don't serve the greater good, and this is clearly one of those situations.
Wind and solar power have the effect of increasing rather than decreasing the emissions of conventional pollutants and greenhouse gases, because they're so unreliable. They have to be backed up with conventional either coal or gas-fired power plants, and those have to be cycled up and down depending on whether on wind and sunlight conditions. And the cycling of those plants means they have to be run inefficiently, which increases their emissions.
New York State turbines are averaging a pathetic 23% capacity factor if they're producing at all.
We have more oil, coal, natural gas to keep us going for centuries. So renewable is really a false choice.
The bigger problem is the low power density available for wind farms. There's just nothing you can do about it.
You're destroying thousands of acres of land. You're pouring millions of tons of concrete, lots of trucks to truck in. You're destroying these rural roads, because you have to use all these big trucks to truck in both the base of the wind turbines and the turbines themselves.
The highly variable power with wind speed. Primarily you make a 10% change in the wind speed, you make a 30% change in the power, and if you want to have steady power, you can't have wind turbines.
Every time these wind turbine projects come into a town, they tear them apart. It's really, really horrible.
The reason we're here is to educate the public about the negative impacts of wind energy. When you're living in a residential area with industrial wind turbines, it's critical that you know what the negative impacts are. The wind power companies didn't tell us. Our town boards didn't tell anyone. So who's there and who's responsible to educate everyone about it? We are, the people, and that's why we're here, so people are aware of what's coming.
You can see this in other areas of our state and of our country where these wind turbine projects have come to be. And what happens is they come into town and they pit neighbor against neighbor, elected officials against their constituents, and so on and so forth. And I can't blame those landowners that are in some cases struggling, maybe hanging on to a family farm and hanging on by a thread, and someone comes in and they're dangling money in front of them. I understand that they want to take it.
They offer you money. So if you are in need and you don't read the small print, you can fall for it easily.
Contacted my town board, gave them a lot of information, all of which they ignored, as several members on the town board had contracts with the wind company, which happens more often than not in a lot of the wind projects.
Some of the townships are apparently conflicted in interest, where various town municipal officers have been identified by the New York State Attorney General as having financial interest in the wind farms.
Hi, my name's Rob Bomber. I own a piece of property up on East Road. We pay taxes, we support the community, we support local businesses, we come in for hunting, summertime, everything else. If it goes, I'm not going to spend another penny in this town.
I just wanted you to know, regardless of what happens and the outcome on this, that we have done a lot of research. It isn't that we just sit on our hands and just thought we was going to get a lot of money.
I don't doubt your integrity at all. Up in Arkwright, all right, none of this PIP stuff is done. We don't know anything about our water quality, the wildlife, the noise. Nothing is being told. So we formed a group and we are doing a class action. Now, if anyone wants to join us and help us, I've got a handout here for contact information. All right? I'm done.
But I know one thing that is absolutely true. There has been no transparency in this process from the beginning.
The only thing that has ever been reliably generated by industrial wind is complete and utter civil discord.
These windmills do not happen. They're not built without massive and ongoing government subsidies. You need federal green credits to build them, and you need what's referred to as off-take agreements or power purchase agreements with organizations, typically government organizations like Nazzaro, where they are agreeing to buy electricity at above market prices and then turning around and selling it on the open market at a loss. Well, who's covering that loss? We are, the taxpayers. And so it's totally unnecessary to come in and tear apart communities, tear apart the landscape, have a negative impact on people's health, have a negative impact on people's quality of life and on their property values. For what? So that we can throw away taxpayer money in the process. It's just a totally useless process that should be eliminated. At the end of the day, this is a local issue. It has to be fought at the local level. I have certainly already had people attacking me in this campaign for county executive. A letter to the editor was in the paper recently distorting my position. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be used against me. And there are certainly people that you know, aren't going to vote for me because they feel, whether they feel I'm against green energy or I'm against their personal profit from these windmills. There are people that are going to vote against me specifically for that, but I'm going to stand on my principles and I'm going to tell people the truth. And the truth is, this is going to have a massive negative impact on Chautauqua County. And as the Chief Executive Officer of Chautauqua County, should I be elected so, I have a responsibility to do what's right for everyone in our county.
Where is the liberty and justice when I have neighbors telling me that they can do whatever they want to with their land and it sucks to be you?
There's at least 16 surrounding this property. They just went one right after the other.
We don't want to fight with the ones who are the proponents for these, but they're not really reading this fine print.
People are becoming ill and they're having to abandon their homes. They have found that infrasound can travel 6 miles. The state of Vermont, just yesterday, Public Service Board announced that from here on, all wind turbine setbacks in the state of Vermont would be 5,000 feet. That's 5 times what the setbacks are here in Chautauqua County.
The infrasound has to be addressed. That's one thing. Everpower denies it, that it's an issue if it's subaudible. That's contrary to all the research that's coming out.
The health problems that they've talked about were called wind turbine syndrome. Dr. Nina Pierpont had done information on, and some of it was caused, infrasound was a major problem, and besides the cardiovascular issues.
Try living under one of them or near them within a quarter-mile, half-mile, day after day after day, and hearing the humming and feeling the vibration, the infrasound. You don't even have to hear it, it's felt. It's felt in your home when you put a glass of water on your counter and you watch your water vibrate.
Each turbine makes its own unique noise. They creak and they groan, and the wind sound is different, so that when you get the cumulative impact of a bunch of wind turbines, people forget it's not just one.
With the majority of the legislators in Albany coming from the New York City area, I think there'd be no desire to want to know the truth. And I think that they would consider this as a topic too hot for them to oppose. And especially for them because they don't have to worry about it in New York City. I mean, we know that when the governor tried to put windmills offshore in Long Island Sound, you know, I think it was 50 miles offshore, he got shot down immediately because the well-heeled people on Long Island said we don't want that. So now he can come upstate and try and advance his agenda by going in and bullying these small communities and waving a little bit of money around. So I think the state legislators in New York City wouldn't bother to oppose it because number one, it doesn't affect them, and number two, they don't want to take the chance that they might look like they're not being progressive enough or green enough by doing so.
The value of land around the site, say even a mile away, if the property value decreases?
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, we didn't do a post-construction report or any sort of, because we weren't asked to. It wasn't something that we looked into doing, and we've had no complaints from the town of Howard. Can we sit here as a company and say that some property value around a project is not going to be affected, or no property value? No. And to your point, sir, I cannot say whether or not a home value in a project area, I won't sit here and say that no home value in a project area would be adversely affected, because certainly someone's desire to move into an area could be adversely affected by that.
I sold a farm that was 100 acres in Orangeville, and according to what I got for it, I believe that I lost around $100,000 on that farm.
I lost $120,000 on my home, which sat on the market for years, and couldn't get a buyer for it.
My biggest investment is my property, and now I'm going to be looking. My property faces kind of southwest, right where I'm going to be looking at probably 7 of them. And nobody's going to tell me here that my property is going to be worth what I paid for it, because I never would have bought it, never would have thought about buying it if I was looking at windmills. So that's a loss for me. Not everybody gains on this. There's some landowners that might gain.
Independent studies of realty values in proximity to wind farms have been shown to be decreased significantly.
From where we sit in our home, we should be able to see 24 from the Ball Hill Wind Project, and we'll see many more from the Arkwright project, and the proposed Casadega project will be behind us with 30 more. So we'll have quite a lot in our area, and it's going to lower our family, our property values. It's just, it won't be home again.
All the things that make this special, they're going to basically destroy the things that make Chautauqua County different from Erie County.
When you talk about schools getting money and all, you are being bribed with your own money.
It's being presented as here is a way for people in your state to get free money. No, it's not, because when you produce wind power, it's much more expensive to consumers than conventional power. So all you're doing really is shifting money from everyone in the state who doesn't have a wind turbine to the very few who will have a wind turbine placed on their property. So you're giving money away from the many to the few. So it is something that is not free money coming in. We're just shifting it, and we're not shifting it in a good way.
The jobs that may be created, the economy that may be pumped, may be temporary compared to the long-lasting negative side effects.
Quite frankly, I think it's more about politics than science. Because if you really dive into this, you realize that the science doesn't really support what they think they can accomplish with this so-called green renewable energy.
The public was never notified on these, exactly how big they are and the impacts that they were going to have. And they are industrial wind, they're wind turbines, and they don't belong in a residential area.
The local people should have some say in this too. Anything that's going to impact their lives to this degree should be something that they could have some say in it.
We don't feel that the taxpayer should have to subsidize wind power or any other form of power. Any power should stand in the free market, and the test of the free market will determine whether it's worthwhile and efficient. not politicians in Albany or Washington.
The sounds that you don't hear, those subliminal sounds, are very harmful to children. And they've just gone ahead with this, the government-funded business of putting up windmills without really checking into the local community and what they thought about it and what the intelligent people who have researched this understand about it. So, which is that it's harmful to kids primarily.
They're hiding. This is all lies, and they're hiding, and it's just a few people that are going to make money off of this, and there's not going to be a return for people that are going to suffer the consequences of these wind farms once they're put up.
The project, the industrial wind turbine project, does not have a place here. The setback requirements are not adequate, and the homes are too close, and there's a growing stream of evidence is pointing to the fact that there's adverse health effects and environmental degradation.
It seems to be a total disregard for this place, the environment, the wildlife, the bird habitat, and the people here. If we had known this was going to happen, we never would have bought here. This is like a sick joke or some kind of worst nightmare to bring something like this into an area like this. You can't turn Lackawanna or Love Canal into a beautiful place like Arkwright, but they're turning Arkwright into an industrial site.